Is this the Paranormal Food Consciousness Podcast?
Hey, what do you want to play? Gin Rummy or poker? Or are you in the mood for some Old Maid?
I haven't heard that in a long time. I don't know. I kind of like poker. Wait a minute. That's not a standard deck. What are you playing with there?
No, it's not. See here?
That's tarot cards, right?
Do you know how tarot cards were created and why?
I only associate them with people with crystal balls and people wearing flowing skirts and things. I really don't know.
Tarot is a set of cards that displays allegorical representations. The cards can be laid out and interpreted as a way of revealing facts about the subject of the reading. People believe the cards can be used for divination or accessing the unconscious. Each card over the years has evolved into a variety of symbolic meanings.
I think accessing the unconscious, it sounds like they're talking about your subconscious as a method for trying to intuit information. I guess we can credit Arthur Edward Waite, an American-born British poet and scholarly mystic. He's the co-creator of the popular and widely used Rider-Waite Tarot deck, as well as the book, The Pictorial Key to the Tarot. He wrote about divination, ceremonial magic, alchemy, and Kabbalism. He was a prolific author in academic circles with notable works on the Holy Grail and the Book of Ceremonial Magic. Waite spent most of his life near London, connecting to various publishing houses and edited a magazine called The Unknown World. Wait, I hear our hungry nephew coming. Let's let him have his say, and then you can tell me more about Arthur Waite.
I'm hungry. Let's get cooking.
So what more can you tell me about Arthur Edward Waite?
He worked for Horlicks in 1900 to 1909 as a manager. And do you know what Horlicks is known for?
Sounds familiar.
It's malted milk.
Oh, I remember that. We had Ovaltine and malted milk. Boy, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, it certainly was. But it's sounding really good right now. Malted milk, in case you listeners have never tried it, is a powdered gruel made from a mixture of malted barley, wheat flour, and evaporated whole milk powder. The powder gives a distinct flavor to beverages and other foods. Malted milk became a standard offering at soda shops and became more popular when mixed with ice cream to make a malt. Remember malt shops and soda shops?
Oh, yes. Everyone must remember those.
Sounds good right now. And this, what we're going to do in honor of Arthur Waite, we're going to make malted milk biscuits. And it's a very simple recipe.
Sounds yummy.
We take a half a cup of butter, a half cup of castor sugar or just regular sugar.
Do you want to say it in grams too?
I can. Let me go ahead and do the cups first, the American equivalents. And then we'll go back and do the grams. So it's a half cup butter, half cup sugar, 1 egg, 1/4 cup malt extract, 3 cups self-rising flour, and 3/4 teaspoon salt. The grams are for butter, it's 125 grams, 88 grams of castor sugar, 1 egg, 45 grams malt extract, 370 grams of self-rising flour, and the 3/4 teaspoon of salt.
Pretty simple.
Yes, it is. And so what we would do is we would cream the butter and the sugar, beat in the egg, add malt, and then beat everything together. Add the flour and salt and mix into a ball. Put the dough in the refrigerator for 30 to 60 minutes. And when I did it, I left mine in for 60. This makes the dough easier to roll out. 10 minutes before you roll out the dough, preheat your oven to 150, 300, and line a baking tray with grease-proof paper or parchment paper. Roll out the dough the thickness of a coin and cut out the rectangular shapes or squares as you choose. Place on the tray and bake for 15 to 20 minutes until edges go lightly brown. Leave to cool a while on the tray before transferring to a cooling rack. And it's so excellent with a glass of milk.
Do they come out
Yeah.
crispy or like a Belgian sort of waffle, or do they come out like what you would get in a normal waffle iron?
They're a little bit crispier and they have that malted taste to it. So they're,
I guess they're biscuits, so it's not really waffly. I don't know. It was making me
yeah,
think of Belgian waffles the way it was done. But it's more crispy. It's not a flaky biscuit because there's
yes,
not like
no,
layers of
no,
butter.
it's a crispy, more of a crispy cookie biscuit, I would say.
What kind of things do you put on it? Is it the kind of biscuit where you want to put gravy, or is it the
No,
kind
no,
you
no.
would? No.
No, it's more,
No.
it's like you,
Oh,
like you would.
no.
Yeah, that's it. No.
Oh no. Oh no. Oh no, 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 no.
In the meantime, what else can you tell me about our subject for today?
Yes, he was a prolific poet and later an occult researcher and critic and a highly experienced practitioner of the mystical and esoteric arts. And his transition work brought an international circuit of occultists to the public eye. In fact, I have a poem from the book that's titled A Book of Mystery and Vision by A.E. Waite, published in London in 1902. And he went by, Arthur is his name, but he also published as A.E. Waite.
I see. Well, are you going to read the poem for us?
Well, maybe you should just psychically try to figure out what the poem says.
No. Let me play you some background music.
Okay, and this is an excerpt from the actual one of his poems here. Oh, holy, 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 wild, sweet to the ear and eye is the blessed life and the haunted life in the land of sorcery. Will I not dwell in these ways forevermore? Breathe harps and all ye strings in a world of strings, and every voice in the world of voice inquire. Over the sea and the shore, lowly and faintly and fading far away, with sudden terror and hint of all unspeakable things, the dusk in the heart of the fire, lowly and faintly fading far away. Over the senses breathe till the senses swim, chants in the dells and dingles, among the groups so dim, standing at the footpath ends, anthem, litany, hymn, of the world's delight from the pleasant rite in the missal of the fairy. The anthems swell and never a chord is lost. The light of the vision floats forever around, and the perfect peace of the heart by an anxious thought uncrossed. Of the life, in the blessed life is found, all under the purple sky, which swoons and falls in a mist of opal and amethyst, on fields and meadows and hills in the land of sorcery. At evening, the light of a lone star fell through the lilac gloaming and gloom, and a voice fell with it. It seemed in the mist of the choric spell on the sorcery craft and bloom, and, stilling the pulse of 1,000 strings, said, sails may fail thee, but wings, take wings. Then suddenly out of the land withdrew the savour, the music, the scent, the hue. A curtain of darkness drooped from the sky on the blessed life of sorcery. The star in the distance sings and sings, I have burned my ships, I return with wings. O'er the wall at the world's end, eyes of pity shine on the quest for the mystic city.
Deep thoughts.
He so loved writing poetry with questions of mysticism, and he wrote so many books on the occult. And in the book, The Occult Sciences, 1891 complete, he wrote accounts of spontaneous manifestations from the other world in the absence of any thought, expectation, or desire on the part of the witnesses, have constituted, as already stated, a large section of supernatural history in all times and countries. So also the concordant relation between individuals compromised in the circle may be counterbalanced by other advantages. Tornado and tempest cannot always interfere when a strong force has been developed by other conditions. Hands clasped for the formation of a circle are as much a guarantee against imposture when light is obscured or excluded as an indispensable element of success. Under certain circumstances, any class of the phenomena may be produced in open day or in the midst of a brilliant artificial illumination, while many private circles are affirmed to have been established with the most gratifying results in the absence of any developed medium.
I was browsing through that book and found that he often spoke of a circle. Is he referring to a physical circle?
Yes, sometimes he does talk about a circle or group of people, but other times he speaks of phenomena within and outside of certain boundaries or circles. He said, true phenomenal spiritualism, as expounded by its reasonable adherents, is a scientific investigation into the nature, cause, and operation of certain forces which appear to originate outside the normal plane of nature and give evidence of human intelligence which cannot be identified with which is resident in the observer.
He seems to be trying to rationalize a scientific approach to natural or paranormal phenomena, making us realize that it may not be natural to us at all.
I agree. He wants to keep open minds when encountering the unknown. He also said, experiments which are usually dependent for their success upon atmospheric conditions, upon disposition of the observer, and upon those unknown faculties which constitute what is called mediumship, cannot be readily conducted because it's only up to a very limited point that we are able to ensure the condition. The investigation of the phenomena of spiritualism is therefore beset with uncertainties. The communication of the two worlds is occasionally accomplished very readily and in a very complete manner. At other times it is difficult and long in the process without any assignable reason. It is evident, therefore, that the student of mysticism who desires to assure himself that the modern branch of magical practice can offer to the conscientious experimenter a reliable instrument of communication with supersensual planes and extra mundane modes of subsistence, should endeavor by the most patient and exact observation to increase the knowledge of conditions. He was so fascinated by the supernatural, yet yielded to embrace everything with scientific process and evidence. He's a very interesting guy.
And I'm sure controversial.
Mhm.
It's hard
Very.
to go to apply what mainstream scientists believe is a scientific method to phenomena that it's hard to measure and
Mhm.
replicate, kind of mysticism he talks about. But that's really
Mhm.
interesting.
You know what? I've been thinking about those malted milk biscuits. They were so good with a glass of milk, but you know what else goes good with a good glass of milk?
What's that? Chocolate chip cookies?
No. Well, I mean, yes, but today it's about malted milk. So how about some easy malted milk waffles?
Oh, great.
That sounds good to me too. Okay, so the ingredients that you need for these waffles are going to be cooking spray, 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 5 tablespoons malted milk powder, 2 tablespoons cornmeal, 2 tablespoons white sugar, 1 1/4 tablespoons baking powder, and a 1/2 teaspoon salt, 2 cups of milk, 2 eggs beaten, 1/4 cup of butter melted, and 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract. Okay, step 1, preheat a waffle iron according to your manufacturer's instructions. Spray the inside of the waffle iron with cooking spray.
Or a bunch of butter.
Ooh, you could do that. That's right. That sounds good. For step 2, we stir the flour, milk, cornmeal, sugar, baking powder, and salt together in a bowl. In a separate bowl, whisk the milk, eggs, butter, and vanilla extract. Pour it slowly into the flour mixture and stir just until the batter is combined. Don't over mix it.
But what really happens if you overmix?
It gets tough. It gets really tough. And when you don't mix it so hard, it'll be fluffier. Let's see, step 3, pour batter, working in batches, into the preheated waffle iron and cook until golden brown, about 5 minutes. But with my old waffle iron, it's usually more like 8 minutes. And then, of course, after you make those, you just inhale and then add butter, syrup, or fruit. It makes your kitchen smell so good, so good.
And you could do a keto version, I suppose. You could probably, certainly sub the white sugar with something like monk.
Right. Probably with keto, the recipes I did a keto one, and I used almond flour with eggs, and you would not use, like you said, the regular white sugar, but you could use monk fruit or any sugar substitute as well. Butter is really good with that as to use, but it turns out really good. And some people just do what they call chaffles.
Yes.
And the chaffles are just the egg and the almond flour, and then you can add veggies, like maybe some people use green onions to make it more savory. They use bits of bacon in it. So there's all kinds of things you could do to make it
the chaffles
keto friendly
are really interesting. It's like you could just do it with eggs and cheese, right?
Right.
But then I read of people doing things like making them chocolate and sweet, and I just can't get into that. It's too much eggs for making it in a bit. But some people really enjoy it.
They, especially if you're deprived of flour for a long time, I think it's a welcome, something crispy to eat, something really warm and crispy. But those are really good too. Those are all good substitutes, and anything in a waffle iron to me is good.
Yeah, there's no way to substitute the malted milk powder, though. I don't.
No,
I mean,
not to have that taste.
That's sweetened like with barley.
Mm-hmm. It's that gruel types. It has that special taste. Yeah, and it just kind of is nostalgic to me. So
I used to like to have it by the spoonful. Grab a spoonful of it and
of Ovaltine.
Oh no! Well, actually, just the malted milk.
Yeah. I just remember we had Ovaltine most of the time. I don't remember the malted milk. Maybe once in a while, but I think we had a lot more.
I actually have malted milk somewhere, but it's probably years old. The cabinet.
Oh
in
my!
The pantry. Yeah. But,
well, that's interesting.
But this sounds like a good, delicious recipe.
Yes. Try it. I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, let us know, listeners, how you like it. So this story was posted in the subreddit No Sleep. So that's Reddit, and then one of the subcategories in it, which they call subreddits. And it is supposed to be a place for people to share their scary personal experiences. In this story, the OP, or the original poster, is named N100. And he writes about how he was a fraud fortune teller until he woke up something ancient.
He was a fraud fortune teller? So he intentionally set out to scam people?
Apparently so. But as you will see from the story, he tried to justify it by doing what he perceived to be good deeds.
In other words, the ends justify the means?
Exactly. Have you ever been to a fortune teller?
No. The closest thing I got to a fortune teller were the self-proclaimed gypsies we met back in high school. Do you remember them? It was a large family with an eccentric house at the end of a busy intersection on a little corner.
Yes, I do remember them now that you mention it. It was quite decorative. When I was in high school, they actually cursed me.
What? What do you mean they cursed you?
Back then, I was working in an ice cream shop, and a subgroup of them, came in and bought banana split and sat down to eat them. They were nice and everything and enjoyed waiting on them. But in a few minutes, a man and a woman from the family approached the counter. They showed me a thin piece of plastic which they found and demanded their money back.
Did they choke on that plastic?
No, it was just a little piece of plastic you might see on any plastic container that's been mechanically cut to separate them. But they were claiming that it was like a piece of hair, and it was just an outrage that this would be in their banana split. And so they demanded a refund of all their food.
So what did you do?
Not knowing any better, I called the owner, and she said, no, go tell them you're not giving their money back. And I went over, tried to be as nice as possible, and said, no, the owner said, I can't give your money back. And so they were outraged at that. And it was a woman raised her hand and, oh, I will curse you. I curse you. And they kept saying that as they walked out of the store.
Oh, so did you worry?
No, not really. At that age, it's like, well, that was interesting.
Tell me more about the story on Reddit about the fraud fortune teller.
Sure. We did go off on a little bit of a tangent there. Yes, let's return to the story. I'd like to make it clear right away that my intention was always to be a fraud, a con artist. I knew what I was doing right from the start. I didn't believe in fortune telling, in tarot cards, or contacting the other side. I just knew two things. One, I was a good actor. And two, people are so incredibly willing to believe. I started my business in 2009. I started small. I took appointments online and held seances in my living room. I read cards for people over the phone, and I saved up enough money to buy an authentic-looking crystal ball. And actually, that saving didn't take very long. I was a little surprised at how quickly my business grew, but I should have known that on the internet, word of mouth travels quickly. In 2012, I was able to move into a slightly larger apartment with a large front entrance that I used strictly for business. I had everything you could possibly think of. Tapestries on the walls, candles burning everywhere, and beads and tassels and softly lit lamps. It was oh so cliche and just about perfect. I suppose I wasn't doing any of this out of malicious intent. People would come to me with questions, problems, and I would give them my honest advice under the guise of spiritual direction. If some lady ended up divorcing her abusive husband and living a happier life, she believed it was because the spirits told her to, not me. I tried to make my prophecies useful. I didn't want any of that tall, dark stranger nonsense. And I think that's why people came back. I told them what they needed to hear, rather than what they wanted to hear. And if I happened to look up their info before they came so that I could magically know things about their past, who's to say that ever hurt the situation? Like I said, I didn't believe in ghosts or the veil or even the power of my tarot cards. I thought it was all a load of pretend nonsense, and I was just a simple actor making use of my talents to support myself. I am posting here today to tell you, do not make that mistake. I'm not sure why I was allowed to continue in my disbelief for so long, but I eventually got caught. And I got caught by something bad, something so old and powerful that I'm not even sure it has a name. I was running an ordinary session for a new client, a woman I had never met before, but who seemed much more into the whole thing than my average customer. She even told me that she had slept with lavender-soaked cotton balls in her ears to better hear the spirits when she came to her appointment. I was certain that she had just made that one up, but I commended her on her thoughtfulness and told her it would make the seance even more productive. We sat in front of my crystal ball and I eased her into it with a light guided meditation, slowing her breath and having her close her eyes while I lit candles and spread out my tarot cards. Having looked at her social media profiles before this appointment, I had seen her posts about her cat's vegetarian diet, and I was planning on mystically telling her that cats are actually carnivores. But something started happening when I asked her to open her eyes again. As I fanned out the tarot cards into a semicircle, some of them stuck to my fingers. The woman gasped, and I made a show of it, telling her that these cards held meaning. They wanted to be seen. I flipped over the first one, the Tower. She paled. I winced. It is not a great card to start out with, but I could make it work. I launched into a speech about how the Tower could be good for her, symbolizing a revelation, a violent throwing off of old ideas, specifically the vegetarian cat diet. But then I flipped over a second card and stopped dead in the middle of a sentence. The Tower. Again. There should be only one tower in a deck, and I only had the one deck. There was no way I possibly had two identical tower cards in the same deck without ever noticing. The woman was shaking a little bit now, mumbling words that I couldn't hear over the rushing in my own ears. I smiled weakly, told her it was a mistake, and flipped over the third card. The Tower. Fourth card. Tower. Fifth. Sixth. And I finally stopped after the seventh because the woman in front of me had fully fainted to the ground. I moved to help her up, but at that moment, all the candles I had lit a few minutes ago blew out in a cold rush of air. I sat heavily back down in my seat, and I felt like I had gotten the breath knocked out of me. My eyes started fluttering. My vision went blurry. By this time, my heart was pounding, and I had no idea what was happening to me. I thought I was having a stroke or a heart attack. At least my hands started moving of their own accord. I nearly cried out, but my jaw felt like it was wired shut. My hands shot up to clutch my face, and though the thin skin of my fingers, I felt something move beneath the surface. Like little suffocating vines were twirling around my bones, wrapping around my ligaments. I realized I could still control the rest of my body, and I wrenched myself up out of my seat and over to a hanging mirror. I could only see my own terrified face, hands clutching at it so hard that my knuckles were white, while dark shapes snaked underneath the surface of my skin. My eyes looked wide and hollow, set deep in my face as if someone else were looking out from them, out of the bottom of a deep pit. My mouth snapped open involuntarily, and a black substance rose up out of my lungs, choking me and spilling in between my teeth. And that's when I heard it. The voice, speaking from deep within my chest and resonating through every fiber of my body.
You play at prophecy and deny that power is far more ancient than you exist. You mask insolence with guidance and have the audacity to call yourself superior. This is your fall from the tower, and we have always been waiting at the bottom.
The black liquid continued to flow from my open mouth, staining my clutching hands, and I started to see spots in my vision. I screamed at myself not to pass out, but I couldn't fight to stay awake. I felt the tendrils receding from my hands as my last shred of consciousness faded away. I don't know how long I was out, but the woman and I woke at the same time. She rushed out of there as quickly as she could, and I was too stunned to realize that she left without paying. I probably wouldn't have stopped her anyway. I didn't want to tell anyone at first, not even my girlfriend, who knew that my practice was fake. Well, it used to be fake. I canceled all appointments for a week and just lay in my bed, terrified to touch any of my instruments for fear that the voice take me over again. Finally, I couldn't stand it any longer and came here to post this. The business side of my brain wants to know if there's a way to use this, a way to come to an agreement with whatever voice spoke to me, a way to coexist and continue to run my shop. The sane part of my brain wants to run away into a different country and take up accounting. Either way, I urge everyone reading this to believe it. Don't mess around with things you don't understand or believe in, and don't underestimate the power of the other side.
Ooh, excellent story.
Agree. I'll bet our listeners have many stories themselves.
Yes. And if you have a story you'd like to share, please let us know on Twitter or on our website. We might use it in an upcoming podcast. If we could go back to Waite's book, The Pictorial Key to the Tarot, it is a colorful divinatory tarot guide with illustrations by Pamela Coleman Smith. There is a website where you can read the contents of the book, and we will put that link on our website blog for this podcast.
We've learned what a scam artist does, but for people who really want to start a legitimate tarot card reading service, is there any advice for them that you've run across?
As a matter of fact, I was reading a Business Insider story about a lady named Patty Woods who says she has been a professional tarot card reader for over 20 years. In the article, she describes what her days are like.
Is this a recent article? And did she go online when the pandemic hit?
Yes, she stopped holding in-person sessions and started doing virtual reading. She charges about $50 for a half-hour session, and she works out of a spare room in her home. She says that a reputable reader won't tell you that someone in your family is going to die or that there's a curse placed on your love life. She says all those approaches are a scam.
That kind of reminds me, there was a recent article about a purported psychic scam artist. It was in the BBC. Man from the United States is suing a psychic in the United Kingdom because the psychic promised him that she could save his marriage if he paid $5,100 to remove a curse that his ex-girlfriend put on him. The psychic, who he had found on Google, said he would be unhappy and in danger if the curse was not lifted.
Makes you want to wonder why he was cursed in the first place, right?
Yeah, it sounds like the psychic actually said he was cursed and he wasn't aware of it before.
Oh, I see. Well, the psychic in that BBC story definitely sounds questionable. Patty, the author of the Business Insider story, doesn't consider herself a fortune teller, but instead she uses tarot cards as a tool to divine information about a person's circumstances. She learned by reading books, practicing on friends, and having her own cards read. She says studying the cards is like studying a language, and you eventually get to the point where the cards just seem to talk to you. you develop a rapport with them.
I guess in the story we read in the podcast, I guess the cards were developing a kind of scary rapport with the author.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Does Patty do anything special to prepare for her sessions?
Yes. Although she is currently not seeing clients in person due to COVID-19, she still wants to make her space as sacred and as still as possible and cleanse it using sage, Palo Santo, which is a medicinal wood, or a crystal infused oil spray. She sets up her desk with whatever cards and crystals she's using for that day, and then does a meditation in order to be as grounded as possible, because often a lot of heavy emotional stuff will come up in the readings. She said she needs to be sure that she doesn't take on the emotional energy of others.
Reading, does she describe what a reading's like? I imagine it's not quite like the story we told
No.
with people passing out.
No, she didn't say that. She does indicate that clients ask her questions and tell her as much or as little as they'd like. Some people come with a list of questions. Others just want to see what comes up. She shuffles the cards and lays them out one by one as she turns them over. She says that each card has its own meaning, but the real story happens when you see how cards interact. Once some message starts popping up, the client will often start to make the connections and ask deeper questions. Patty says the ultimate goal with every reading is to make sure the client feels some sense of hope, purpose, or some clarity. The cards may not necessarily say what that person wants to hear, but at least they can leave with a plan or a direction.
Do you get the sense that A.E. Waite and people like Patty believe that anyone can read tarot cards?
Well, I do, although I get the sense that Waite was more dogmatic about it, demanding that the readers study the occult deeply and with a seriousness that leads to a high degree of mysticism, though he still maintained the importance of the scientific approach.
Well, it was a lot more popular back in his days.
Yes.
Or at least it was more well accepted. I'll tell you what, I'm not going to be able to think about tarot cards again without thinking about malted biscuits and waffles.
Oh, yeah. Now I'm going to start thinking about that all the time. Maybe you could start your own tarot card reading service and offer a side of malted biscuits to your clients. That's another way of channeling A.E. Waite.
Yeah, that could be the sort of unique thing about it. People would probably come for the biscuits rather than the reading if they're as good as you describe them.
Oh, yes, they are.
I look forward to making them. And this has been an interesting episode. I've enjoyed learning about Alan Waite, his malted history.
I'm sure that we will revisit some version of tarot cards in the future. They've been around since the 1700s, and there are so many numerous varieties of decks.
If we end up telling a story where we have to go back to the 1700s, we're going to have to find some more books, old books on recipes during that time.
Only this time, let's not use a whole pound of garlic like we did in the first episode.
I kind of liked it.
Oh, I'm sure you did, but you need to stay far away from everybody. Until next time, enjoy those malted biscuits and waffles.
This has been the Paranormal Food Consciousness Podcast.